it's safe. And the physician, the scientist, goes ahead and starts the study. Throughout the entire study, that physician scientist has to keep giving reports about that patient's well-being, all the patient's well-being in the whole study. So from the very beginning until the very end, the scientist is constantly saying, here's my results, here are any bad effects we've had. So they might say, out of 400 patients in this study so far, we've had 6 patients that had a bad fever that required aspirin to lower their temperature. We've had 24 patients who developed a mild rash, for which we gave them a lotion to control the rash. And other things might happen. Sometimes for a very seriously ill patient, for example, a patient who's in a phase 1 study, the sickest patients, sometimes a patient will die. And the question is, did the patient die because of the disease, or did the medication or the treatment cause the death? And that's a very important part of a research study, because if that happens, at that point, the study is stopped until further investigation is done to determine whether the patient died because of the drug or died because of the normal course of his or her disease. From that point on, we keep following that study. So let's assume that the review group concluded that the patient died from his normal cancer. Then the study picks up again and puts more patients into it. But again, we're constantly watching to make sure there's nothing extreme for these patients. There shouldn't be anything that threatens them or does harm to them in any way that we can prevent or avoid. So research studies are very, very important. One of the problems that researchers have is that people are reluctant to take part in research studies. They want somebody else to do it. Let the other guy do it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get involved. But if everybody says that, then we'll never advance our field of science. We won't know better information to help patients in the future. So by taking part in a research study, you're helping to make a difference. Right now, if you have cancer, around the world, only about 3% of patients with cancer take part in a research study. That means it's very slow to produce new science. If we could simply double that number to 6% or 10%, we could rapidly change the course of our knowledge, because we'd have patients coming into studies so much faster, we would get answers faster. Right now, it might take us 3 to 5 years or even longer to recruit enough patients to conduct that study. If we could have that number of patients in a year, we'd have the answer in 2 or 3. Because after the patients are all in the study, then you begin to look at your data. So it's very important that patients understand the value of taking part in research. But it's not just patients. It's people who aren't sick, who don't have cancer or other life-threatening diseases. Because we often need someone who is considered the normal arm, the person who's not sick. We need to know, how does this drug affect a normal person? Maybe everybody who's normal gets a fever, or maybe only patients with cancer get the fever and the rash. So it's important for us to have normal comparison group in many studies. So people who are willing to volunteer for those kinds of studies are equally important. So there's really a role here for everybody. There's lots to be done. We have a lot of research still ahead of us that we need to understand how we can advance science through these various research studies. We need your help. We need everybody's help to come forward and join in this crusade to find better ways of treating life-threatening diseases, better ways of preventing them. The best example I can give you of clinical trials and why they're important is if you look at pediatric cancers, children who have cancer. What you'll see is that about 85% of children go on research studies. Depending on the kind of cancer they have, the number varies from 60 to 85. But every child in a children's hospital who has a serious life-threatening illness is offered a trial if there's one available. So what that means is we're giving our very best science to our children, but we as adults are not taking advantage of it. Parents recognize that they want their child to have the best possible treatment. And if their child is suffering, they also want other children not to have to suffer. So they involve their child, they often involve themselves in studies to try to get better answers for tomorrow's children as well as today's children. So it's important to understand that if we're giving this to our children, it's clearly our best because we give our children our very best. So clinical trials are for everyone, but adults tend to be reluctant to get involved. So I would ask each of you to think about what we've heard here today and explore. Keep your eyes and ears open. Look for trials. See if they interest you. You shouldn't take part in every single trial because not everyone is right for you. But find a trial that works for you, that you're interested in, something that will benefit you personally or your family personally, and take advantage of that opportunity to make a difference in the future. Thank you very much for listening.